A push toward a full ceasefire in Libya. World leaders gathered in Berlin over the weekend for a peace conference. They agreed to stop interfering in Libya and respect a UN weapons embargo. But after 9 years of war, the rival factions on the ground in Libya are still refusing to meet.
The mighty gathered in Berlin on a Sunday afternoon. World powers united in a mission of hope. German Chancellor Angela Merkel invited representatives of more than 10 countries to press for a solution to the long-running conflict in Libya. And it was only a few hours before they announced a breakthrough. No more arms shipments to the war-torn country.
We can confirm that we have all agreed to respect the arms embargo and will also monitor it more closely.
Dass das Waffenembargo auch stärker kontrolliert wird, als das in der Vergangenheit der Fall ist.
However, they haven't yet spelled out consequences for breaking the embargo. Instead, the conference pledged not to offer military support to the warring parties. Russia and Turkey in particular have long involved themselves in Libya's civil war. The rival leaders themselves refused to sit down at the bargaining table. Libyan Premier Fayez al-Sarraj met with his ally, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, while warlord Khalifa Haftar joined talks with France's Emmanuel Macron, among others. Much is at stake for the international players here. Libya has oil and gas and is a key transit point for refugees. The conference insisted that a new political process is necessary to address the country's crisis.
And today in Berlin, member states, along with regional and international organizations, have sent a strong signal that we are fully committed to supporting a peaceful resolution of the Libyan crisis.
The real marker of the conference's success or failure won't come until it's clear if the promises made here are being kept, and that could take several weeks.
Hans Brandt, our political correspondent, is covering those talks. Hans, how substantial is this deal on Libya?
If you look at it on paper, it is surprisingly substantial. The conference conclusions, the document that was passed by this conference yesterday, comprises 55 points, and they go way beyond the initial step of ensuring a cessation of hostilities that is then being turned into a formal ceasefire. It goes as far as discussing economic order in Libya, discussing human rights, discussing the prevention of terrorism, and a political process that leads to a unified government in that country. In other words, it's a very, very comprehensive plan, very substantial on paper. The question really is how far the implementation of this will actually go, how much of this will remain ink on paper, and how much of it will be turned into actual action on the ground.
Well, German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas acknowledged that much work remains to be done before peace can be achieved in Libya. Here's what he had to say.
We know that the work has actually only just begun, and that there will certainly be a difficult and labor-intensive path ahead of us. But it was all the more important to reach an agreement at this conference today. We have experienced a spirit of cooperation here today which goes well beyond what we have experienced on other occasions in the past. The ceasefire and armistice will certainly be the first issue. We must now succeed in bringing together the Libyan parties in the conflict in order to create with them the conditions for a political solution to the civil war, so that Libya can achieve lasting peace.
German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas speaking there. Hans, does anyone know what sort of political solution the German Foreign Minister might have in mind?
Yes, this agreement does talk about political solutions. It talks about free and fair elections, about establishing a government and so on. And of course, there is a long, year-long United Nations process in the background where the United Nations has made all sorts of resolutions about what is meant to be happening in Libya, but hasn't happened so far. So the political process is in some sense very clear, but the question is whether that will even be able to start. It hasn't started in the years past. And what the Foreign Minister, Heiko Maas, was emphasizing there was bringing together the warring parties. And that is something that he has been stressing yesterday and today several times, that the two factions, on the one side General Haftar, on the other side the internationally recognized government of al-Sarraj, they have now appointed 5 persons each on each side that are going to meet this week in Geneva to start direct talks about how they are going to resolve things between themselves. That is the process that has to be watched now.
Now, the Berlin conference also produced an agreement by foreign powers to stop interfering in Libya. But how realistic is that, given that several countries like Russia and Turkey are already deeply involved?
Well, we have to say that looking at the conference yesterday, all of these countries have invested a lot of their political prestige in pushing this process forward. The presidents of all of these countries were there. They put their commitment onto paper in this agreement. So one has to accept that with that kind of political backing, this agreement has a chance of actually being implemented and actually turning into something substantial, maybe even into peace in Libya.
Hans, thank you very much for filling us in. DW political correspondent Hans Brandt there.